doing a live video, and then also for the purposes of our podcast. So for those that are watching today, they get to see your beautiful smile, and this is fresh out of post Woman of Inspiration that just happened a couple weeks ago. The adrenaline is still pumping through my veins. How about you, Jen?
Oh, it's like being on this high way up here, and it just, I don't know, it hasn't quite come down yet.
Well, that's okay. We don't need it to come down yet or ever. We've got a whole year planned out, so we can keep that going, and that energy and that inspiration and that motivation and that movement that we're creating for raising the bar for all women. Let's just keep it going for like years and years to come. So no need to get off that train. But what I would like to do is introduce you before we get in, and then we'll dive into your story and your incredible journey and the work that you're doing. What inspires you, and let's inspire our listeners today. So Jenn, you are the founder, executive leader, coach, and executive consultant for Incito Executive and Leadership Development. You are one of the best coaches that I've ever met out there. You have, you know, your application, your letters of reference were overflowing with people that are just such big supporters of you, of your work, of your accomplishments, of really leading and that executive coaching world. And you're coaching like the ones and the decisions makers out there, right? These are the decision makers that need help and guidance, and you're their coach. So Jenn, I'm so happy to have you on today. And what it says in your bio is you help executives across Canada and also worldwide unlock their leadership potential and growth in inspired, authentic leaders. And you have won the 2020 Woman of Inspiration Authentic Leader Award. So how fitting that our award really mirrors everything that you've built your career to do. So Jenn, it's such a joy to have you today share your knowledge and also your story. So let's start there. Welcome.
Thank you. And before we dive in further, I just want to acknowledge this amazing award. And as you said, Authentic Leader Award. If there is something that makes me feel seen, the description of that award was just so touching that I really felt seen, not only as a professional, but as a person, and the values and what's important to me really came through. And in looking at all of the wonderful awards, and they're all amazing, if there's one that had deep personal meaning for me, it is the one that I was recognized with. So thank you.
You are so welcome, Jenn. And I'm going to read off actually that description for you. So I took a little pause here because I thought, how great is it that I'm going to actually share that description with our listeners and our viewers today? Because Jenn, I have to say that we really put a lot of attention to each and every category and think about, you know, who are these women that are inspiring others and what are the qualities and traits that they have. So let me just read that because I did have to go pause and grab the notes, but we have it here now. I'm so excited. A Woman of Inspiration Authentic Leader Award goes to the woman who demonstrates exemplary leadership and has made significant contributions to her industry. She is an authentic leader that values building of relationships and has an entrepreneurial mindset, and she is changing the landscape in which women serve. Drop the mic. And you are such a model, authentic leader for that description, Jenn. So I'm really happy to hear how that is meaningful to you, because that's what we aspire to do. And, you know, when everybody asks, you know, so who are these women of inspiration and why are they so fitting in these categories? When we go through there's so many applicants through this process, and it's really like splitting hairs. But there's certainly experiences and community service and dedication and experience, and the letters of reference all sum up to be that category award winner, and you nailed it out of the park. And so, you know, I think that I would like to start there with your story. All of the women of inspiration have such an incredible story, and your story is touching, and I would love you to share that piece. We talked about it in the green room, and be authentic and start where that age 15 for you, Jenn.
Well, and starting at age 15, I think, is important because we all have a story, and the story that people make up about me today is only partly true, and I'm the sum of all my experiences. And an important experience in my life started when I was 15 3/4. I feel like it's Harry Potter and whatever that train line is, 9 3/4. At 15 3/4, 4 months before I turned 16, it was January, first week of January, just back to school after Christmas holidays. And there was a fight in my family at midnight. And it kept going. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, some crisis counselors came from one of the agencies that help struggling youth and problem youth in the city, and they tried to negotiate on my behalf. And they said that I wasn't a problem child, that nobody could live under the circumstances that I was dealing with, and they tried to negotiate some change to what was happening in my household. And unfortunately, we were unable to come to a solution. And the option was then that I couldn't go into one of these programs for problem teens because I wasn't one. And so I went to a shelter, not because I was a problem youth, but because my family wasn't willing to work with me to create a livable situation for all of us. And so I spent the last 4 months of my 15th year living in a shelter for runaway teens, but I had not run away. My first real experience with living with people that did drugs and prostitution. And I went from being an IB, French Immersion, top of the class student to just trying to figure out how to go to school and not want anybody to know what I was dealing with. And that created something for me that I could have easily chosen a really different path in life. And for whatever reason, I just kept going. I've made some terrible decisions along the way, and a lot of really good ones. But from each one, I learned from and kept talking to different people along the way, whether it was a high school teacher or a guidance counselor or parents of some of my friends. And I started taking control of what I could control rather than focusing on what I couldn't. And as a result, I needed a job when I became 16, and I had to move out of the shelter as soon as I turned 16, and I needed a job. And I joined the military, and I became a mechanic in the military. Why? Why a mechanic? And they actually said, they do all these IQ tests, and they said, why a mechanic? You could actually do anything. And why a mechanic was, during all this challenge, I was taking an automotives elective in high school. And my teacher, Mr. Rainsforth, he saw me at a time where nobody else did. There was a test one day and we couldn't leave for the first hour of a 90-minute class. And so I handed in my test and I pulled out a book. I remember The Stories of Ray Bradbury, and I started reading the book. And then the bell went, or we were allowed to go once the minimum time was up. And I remember leaving the classroom and he says, "Hey, Jen, hold up a minute." And I'm like, oh, now what? And he says to me, "You are the first student to ever voluntarily pull out a book and start reading in my class. Keep doing that." I took 3 years of automotives with him, and that led to my choice for that job, that survival job, to become a mechanic in the military. And it's amazing what it means when somebody sees you for who you are when they don't know everything that's going on, and acknowledge for who you are. And that became something that's important to me in how I want to live my life, is seeing people for their strengths, not just their circumstances.
I actually had to pause there because I got kind of like, I'm like, your story like I get goosebumps thinking about it, how heartbreaking and how hard it was for you at that time. And knowing, our kids are that age. Your daughter's 12, my son is 14, and we don't want anything happening to them that will make them sad or unhappy, or we want the best for them always. And so knowing that you were faced with such hardship at 15 and not having the family environment that was going to support you in that is really heartbreaking, because you couldn't even go to a place to get help because you weren't the problem, right? How
There,
many
there was no other option for me. There also was not any social service support that was available because I was too old to become a ward of the government and too young for welfare or other social services. So for 4 months, I was literally in the gap. And my only place to be was in a shelter until I was old enough to qualify for some other programs. But I didn't want to just sit on a government program either.
So let me ask you something. Do you have that core group of girlfriends? Were you alone during that time, or did you have, a couple friends that were with you when you were 15? Did they know everything, or did anybody else know what was going on?
I think back, I didn't have really close friends. I was just my circumstances were not great. So I didn't have a lot of close friends, but one of the things I did have was a youth program with the YMCA. And through that youth program, I volunteered. And that became some of my best community, was going to the gym, going to the youth program with the YMCA, that we did different activities, to go and volunteer and do children's birthday parties with 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and take them to the pool. And I spent a lot of time at the Y at that time. And whether it was at the Y or at school, those were the places that I spent my time. And at the Y, I learned a lot about leadership, and from youth leadership, and being part of this youth program and volunteering in a variety of capacities. And no matter how much I was in need, and the Y was amazing, they don't believe in giving away memberships to those in need. They believe in everyone has something to contribute and to pay what you can model. And how scared I was to go talk to the general manager and say, I can't pay for my membership anymore. And can you help me? And the courage it took for me to do that. And he asked me, what can I afford? And I told him how much. And he says, okay, we'll do that. And how good I felt then that I could contribute and didn't just need a handout, but a hand up. And that I was able to create an arrangement of how I would contribute to the community in new ways to make up for the difference that I wasn't able to do financially, but I could contribute far more. That really became a home for me.
I think the YMCA is a great facility. I know when I was going through my situation as well, you just sparked a huge memory for me, is that I knew that I needed to take care of myself, right? And so I got a membership at the Y, and I had no money. And we made it work, right? Because I was able to contribute very, very little, but that's what they took. So what a great facility. But I love how, and I want to talk about this a little bit. And what's coming to me is about, you never really know what somebody's going through, right? Behind closed doors, or, even at the Y, you don't know about this young woman, but so giving and so good with kids and such a big heart, or at school, the kid that reads the book, but yet, you go home and you're living at the shelter at the same time. Like, did you confine into did anybody at your school know your circumstance at all?
I think some guidance counselors knew, eventually some teachers knew, some friends knew, but it was a really hard place to be, because there's the fine line of, they don't know, then they can't help, or they don't understand. But if they know, will they feel sorry for me? Will I be that kid that nobody wants to bring home because I'm the kid that lives in a shelter, and what will their parents think of me? And so there was a lot of shame in dealing with that at that time, and being this kid that doesn't have a home and trying to explain what's going on, and not have people feel sorry for me. And we were talking in the green room earlier about how much I dislike the words victim and survivor. At that time, I didn't want to be seen as someone that was a victim or something, someone that was trying to survive being a victim of something, because I'm not a victim, but I'm also not a survivor. I think that's just another spin, the cute spin on, like the cute spin on what's your greatest weakness, and you turn it into a strength. It's like the spin on victim is, oh, we'll just be cute and call it survivor. It's like, no, I had some really hard circumstances that happened to me, and I found my way through them, and it's an integrated piece of who I am. And there's been so many valuable things that I wouldn't trade my hardest stories for anything, because they've allowed me to grow and develop into the person I am today, and to be the person that gives freely to community, because I have benefited so greatly from community that if I want to have community like that for people like me in the future, then I need to be a part of creating that and supporting it so that it can exist for young people like me, women like me, business owners like me, community members like me. I wouldn't trade it for anything, as heartbreaking or hard as it is to think about some of those moments in my life. I'm grateful for them.
I'm actually, I agree 100%. I say the adversity has always been a gift. It doesn't make the challenge as a circumstance by any stretch, any light, like it's hard. You don't even know how you're going to get through it, but you get through it. But the other side of it is this beautiful way that you actually can relate to everybody on such a deeper, meaningful level. And it brings so much purpose to the work that you're doing.
Well, geez, I wish adversity, the gift in it, looked like a gift at the time. Wouldn't that be a lot easier?
Right. But through stories that we're now sharing, if there's anybody that's in the middle of their adversity and their chaos right now, I mean, the beauty and the blessing is that wherever you are right now, know that there's a deeper meaning and a purpose for you, and the gift will come. Doesn't mean that it's not going to be hard getting through there. We're going to have to get through it, but like be filled with the other side where it's going to make you who you are. It's part of your journey, right?
I think part of that is that you can't choose your circumstances, but the gift is in choosing what we do with them.
Correct. Resilience is not resilience is actually, the definition of resilience is the adversity and what you choose to do with the situation that presented to you. And I'm not even getting it right here because you've caught me off track. I'm so overcome with emotions. But it's so true. And I think that woman of inspiration, what really comes to the story behind these incredible leaders like yourself is that everybody sees everything that you've accomplished, that beautiful introduction for what this authentic leader and woman of inspiration is for. But that's why this is so important, because we get to peel back the layers of the onion and we get to learn about what drives you, what your story was, and why you are such the leader that you are. And it comes with a story, a really, most of the time, a very tragic personal story. And thank you for having the courage to share that, Jenn, because it is personal. But if you can't share that story, then others can't learn from it as well.
Well, and if I can't share the story, then I stay stuck in the shame of nobody should know. I don't want them to know, because what will people think of who I am? And they'll think that I'm a victim, or feel sorry for me, or make judgment of me. And shame is about secret keeping. And when we can own all parts of our story, I believe that's part of what allows me to step out with courage and to worry more about am I showing up as the person that I'm proud to be, or am I worried about what everybody else thinks? And don't get me wrong, one of my hardest things in life is wanting to be liked, especially because of periods of loneliness and isolation in my life. But that's what I keep bringing myself back to, is am I showing up as the person that I am proud of, or am I hustling to be liked by someone else?
Mm. Well said, well said. And that resilience quote is coming to me. It's resilience is not what has been done to you, it's what you choose to do what has been done to you. What you choose to do with what has been done to you, that I was missing before. And I also want to ask you, you have a really beautiful 12-year-old, really amazing young woman that you're raising, which I really enjoyed meeting, by the way. So Peyton, yes, I'd like to come over for dinner. Yes, very soon. Your mom asked me about that in the green room. So yes, yes, yes. Love to spend more time with you and your family. But I want to ask, have you been able to come to that point where your daughter actually knows about your journey? I mean, she's 12, you were 15. Does she have you shared that piece with your family yet?
Yes. I am a big believer of being open and age appropriate, transparent with my daughter about some of the things I've experienced in my life, so that she knows me, again, not just the story of who her mom is today, but she knows about me and why things are important to me, or why something's challenging for me, that I'm open and transparent with her. Maybe not all the graphic details, because they're not necessarily age appropriate, but over time sharing more and more with her as a parent, using that judgment of what I feel is appropriate. And it's amazing how understanding and I think appreciative my daughter is, that I'm straight up with her and honest with her, and I don't try and sugarcoat or mince words. It's just very factual about how things were, or what I've experienced in my life. And I hope that then it creates safety and courage in her to speak up about what she's experiencing.
Mm. And I have had the pleasure of meeting her, and I'm a big fan. But I see her at 12, she's very mature. And extremely proud of her mama. So I think that's super lovely to see how your experience and your leadership and your journey has just, you've created such a wonderful family, and what your gifts are that you're sharing that with others is truly remarkable. But I want to touch base. I know in the green room we talked about a couple things that we want to talk about, which I think are really important, about the barriers that you faced. So the first barrier was a very big barrier at 15, and being in a shelter and having to go through until you were 16, like for many months, on your own, and where you didn't really have a choice. And then so you got into the program. So what was the rest of your journey? Let's go through the whole journey, because what led you to this point right now? Let's talk about some of these really aha moments and these big steps of courage that you had to step into without little support.
Well, so at that time, I dropped French immersion, I dropped out of IB, and I just kept trying to work and go to school. I was in the military reserves as a mechanic. I worked Wednesday nights and weekends. And then I needed to take on another job. So I'd work at a coffee shop, a sandwich shop, or you name it, and worked 2 jobs and went to high school. And I didn't have stable housing for many, many years. And then finishing high school, I was a little bit short to have the grades that I needed to be able to do any post-secondary. And I did night school and had to do English and math at night, and I didn't have a lot of confidence in that. And I was again confronted with some amazing teachers, 2 great teachers that saw me and they said, "Oh, well, you want to do the bars here? You're capable of here," and held me to a higher standard. And at the same time, I was looking for a more stable job, and I got myself a job with one of Calgary's most recognized interior designers as his receptionist and personal assistant. And so here I went from, at 15, living in a shelter, couch surfing, unstable housing, having some stable housing, and working for one of Calgary's finest interior designers, and spending time in the homes of the wealthiest, most recognized leaders in our community. And learning that the story that I had about people in different life circumstances than I had was completely untrue. And the informal peek I got into their lives by spending time in their homes, babysitting the plumber, or chatting with them in our reception, in getting to learn about them and meet them and get to know them and build relationships with these wonderful people, I realized that their story is no harder or easier than mine. Their circumstances, their roles in life, their families are different, but everybody has challenge, and that what's hard for me can't be compared with what's hard for someone else. Hard is hard. And I think that's really set me up for really seeing the leaders I work with today as being people first and their role second, not their role first, and seeing them for being an individual, not being a business leader.
Mm.
And from there, I went on to a false start in university. I left that job and started university, and in psychology was my first love. And I struggled because I had to work, again, 2 jobs and go to school, and I didn't have a support system around me. And after a couple of years, I didn't have the best grades because I was working too much, that I made the challenging choice to leave university, to spend a little bit of time regrouping, figuring out a plan so I wasn't getting into more student loan debt. And a friend of mine suggested that I go and apply to A&B Sound, their electronics store many years ago. And
I
says, you're good
remember.
with computers. You're good with computers. I know the general manager. They could use someone like you. They need a computer department manager. And so I became the computer department manager at A&B Sound, and that was the start of 11 years in technology industry. And I quickly went from great success there and creating the best department in the country, to moving over to Shaw Communications and starting out in answering the phones for helping people with their internet tech issues, and then starting growing and developing and taking courses in networking, moving into their IT security team, starting to do some network infrastructure work. And then another colleague left that organization and went over to AT&T and recruited me over to AT&T and moved into a infrastructure role there, and designing and leading projects for hotel chains, banks, oil and gas companies across the country and internationally, that took me through an 11-year career in telecom and infrastructure. Something that I was gifted at, because I got curious about technology in those periods of isolation, and I would use bulletin board systems and later the internet to communicate with people in times of isolation when I wasn't able to communicate other ways, and be able to talk with friends on the phone. That led me to having an innate understanding of how this technology worked, and a brain for the abstract that made me good at it. But really what I was known for in that career was my ability to partner with business leaders, my passion to grow and develop my team, my desire for learning. But I got to a point in my career where I was unsatisfied, and I didn't know what it was. And I ran into some barriers along the way in that career when I was at AT&T and telecom, working on client networks. I remember going to a client meeting one day, and I was the first one to walk in, and I introduced myself, and the client said, "Oh, so you're the sales rep?" I'm like, "No, I'm your architect." And the look on the client's face is, "Oh." And I don't know what the story was going on, but the story I was making up is, "Oh, you're young, you're cute, you're a girl." But I won them over, and I won them over again and again, because I worked really hard, and I worked really hard on learning. I ran into bullying in that career by one of my junior team members, and the other men in my group not backing me up and defending me in something that was clearly not right. And admission by the organization that they didn't know how to deal with the problem, because they just didn't back then. They knew there was a problem, but they just didn't know the way out and how to solve it. I've been downsized in the .com bust. I've been out of work for 9 months and 5 months. I know what it's like to be struggling in that way. And I made the courageous choice to follow what I love to do, not just what I was good at and being rewarded for.
Hmm.
And I went through, in my last technical role, some soul searching of, if not this, then what?
Tough
And that led,
decisions.
tough, because it's like starting all over again. And it led me to quitting my great paying career, an exceptional reputation at that time, being one of very few women in that area of technology at the time, and a lot of upward mobility that I struggled with. Why don't I want it? Because I wasn't passionate about it. And I discovered that what I really loved was growing and developing people, partnering with the business on making strategic decisions. And what if I could do something about this curiosity I have about leadership and why technical leaders behave the way they do? They're good people, but they don't lead very well. And what's that about? And so I made the decision to go back to school full time to get my human resources designation. And when I left, my team members started in one place and landed in another. And what I mean is they asked me where I was going. You're quitting, where are you going? And a couple of them even asked if they could come, which was really flattering. And no, you can't come. Well, why not? Where are you going? I'm going back to school. Their next response was, you're crazy. You have a great career. Why would you abandon that? What are you going to do? And then I told them what I was interested in doing. And what was so validating is they said, oh, you'll be so good at that. That they could see something that I couldn't see. It took me soul searching to find, but as soon as I told them, it was validating that they could see it too.
Amazing.
But when I went back to school, here's the thing I didn't realize was going to be the hardest thing about going back to school. As I had been independent for so long and I was newly married, I was probably married a year at that point of going back to school. And I have wonderful support now available to me. I had a committed partner and my husband by my side who just wanted me to be happy. And the hardest thing about it was going from being financially independent to being reliant and dependent on someone else for the first time in a long time. And that was really hard. And I didn't expect that. But it was something that was really hard for me to work through in that first 6 months or year. And challenged my identity of who I was.
And I almost want to say that survivor, but we won't use that word survivor, but you've been so fiercely independent. And I can't even imagine, I can't actually, I really can't imagine that, because it's significant when you have been the one responsible and in control of how that happens. It's almost like you lose a little bit of, like control.
Well, and that's what I was wrestling with. Am I giving up control? And it's even that I get to make my own choices and choose my destiny and continue to make choices on how I deal with my circumstances. And now am I giving that up and abdicating that to someone else? But what I learned is I wasn't, because I had the right partner by my side. That we're truly a partnership, and that this decision wasn't my career decision. It was our life decision now. It was something we were in partnership with, and that I wasn't abdicating or completely reliant on someone else. We were a partnership and reliant on one another. And this was one of my important steps in our partnership together. And he had a role to play in that step in our partnership together. So it was really hard at first, and he helped me in working through that and realizing that, no, this isn't him helping me. This is us doing together.
That's so brilliant. I love, and I think the first person who I really articulated that was Sheryl Sandberg in Lean In, when she talked about marriage being a partnership, and to choose your partners like you would choose your marriage partners like you would your business partners, because that really does make a lot of sense, that it's your partnership in life. And this is what we're going to do, even though you're going to school, this is for us. in the bigger picture. That's really, it's beautiful. I just look at your journey, Jenn, and I'm like girl fanning you even more than I before did. And I think that what's so beautiful is that I can relate to your story and your struggles and your challenges and also your successes that you're experiencing now. I just, I'm so happy to see everything that you have gone through, all the hard work, all the challenges, but who can be more excited for somebody that is achieving great success than somebody that's willing to own their story, give back, and has been through so much. So I love your story, Jenn. I'm really honored that you're able to be so transparent and authentic with our listeners today. And, I talk about SupportHER. And I think you started sharing a little bit about that, but who are those SupportHERs and champions in your world?
Well, I think most importantly, my husband and my daughter. There's also some wonderful mentors in my life that have come all informally because they've been willing to be vulnerable and ask for help. And it's amazing how some of those wonderful mentors have been with me for just one coffee, and others have been with me for a number of years. And some great support has really come out of unexpected places. And sometimes the areas that I give to, I end up getting back tenfold. The boards that I serve on today, they're all supporters of mine. I learned so much from all the board members that I have the opportunity to serve with. It's like winning the learning lottery to contribute on the boards that I'm on, to learn from them. And then many of them have turned into friends and more informal mentors. But really, all the wonderful people that I've volunteered with have given so much to me, just in richness of learning along the way. I've had some great coaches that, as a coach, you need to have a coach. And I've had some really great coaches that have pushed my thinking and helped me along my journey. And then I just come back to being my own support and how important it is to be on my own support team. And sometimes I get off my own support team and just keep coming back to it.
Amazing. Beautiful said. I love a couple things that really resonated with me as well is that as we grow in our leadership, our circle of influence and those people that are really a mirror of who we are and what we want to achieve in the world are, the people that we do business with, people that we like, we trust, we respect, and the value of building relationships and connections is what it's all about, right? And so, and I think it's really important to, you're an amazing coach. I hear wonderful things about you all the time about Jenn's the best ever, right? And it's because they trust you, they appreciate you, they respect you, but they also know that you're an advocate for learning as well, where you don't just say, I know everything. You're like, I have a coach because I want to elevate and I want to push my limits too, so I can be the best for you. And I think that's really important, for everybody to do. And I mean, I have a whole bunch of them, to be honest, because I push me, right? I think that's really important. So thank you for sharing about that, because I think that support network is really, really significant. And coming from, your experience when you were young and 15 and not having any support, for listeners listening and those watching, it's just like whatever support system you have, even if it's nobody or one person, it doesn't mean that you're not always going to have that. Start building it, start, creating that opportunity. And if you're in the opposite, in the spot for helping somebody, help somebody on their journey.
And I think that's one way that we earn support is by contributing and giving to others. People ask me why I mentor. Well, by mentoring, whether it's formally or informally, having a coffee with someone who's earlier in the HR career or coaching career, or struggling with something else. I don't know how, I don't know where, but the more that I give to community, the more I seem to receive, not from that person, but from others by showing up with a giving approach. It also reminds me to then ask for help myself. Because sometimes we don't ask, people want to help, but they don't want to intrude and they don't want to step into our space. And then by asking for help, they have permission to step up and help. But it reminds me, by mentoring others, reminds me of the things I need to work on and where I might need to be asking for help myself.
Beautiful. Well said. And we look forward to welcoming you to the SupportHER mentorship program, because of course, all of our women of inspiration are leaders. And part of that leadership quality is that you're giving back. You're also helping others succeed. So we look forward to welcoming you for 2021 to a bunch of things here. And as far as your leadership for Women of Inspiration as an authentic leader, we're so proud to have you part of our network, our national, and we're certainly gaining global attention as well. So we're happy to have you part of that journey. So proud. And, before we wrap up, I know that everybody's really wondering, so Jenn, who's your woman of inspiration?
Oh, it feels cliche, but it truly is my daughter. In seeing some of the things that she's had to deal with and watching her grow and develop. Reminds me of who I want to be.
Oh my God, I'm just like gonna get all teary. That's so beautiful. That is so beautiful. And I hope, Peyton, when you're watching this later, you'll share this with her as well. But oh my God, that caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that answer, but that's a beautiful answer. And I love that. So drop the mic. We're done. Jenn, it's been an amazing interview. Once again, I thank you so much for sharing your personal story and your journey, so people can see who you are, what you're doing, but where you come from, and the journey that you've taken requires courage and bravery and commitment and authenticity. And I just love you more just by hearing your story. And thank you so much for sharing it today. Jenn, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they get hold of you? How do they become knowledgeable about your expertise if they are an executive leader that wants to, take their, leadership to the next level? How do they get a hold of you?
They can find me on my website at incito.ca, or they connect up with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenn. So for those of you watching, thank you so much for joining. For those of you listening, this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast, where we are interviewing women of inspiration who are leading by example and inspiring others to dream big. That was Jenn Lofgren, who is our 2020 Woman of Inspiration Authentic Leader. And in the show notes, we will have a little bit about Jenn and how to get a hold of her. So we encourage you to subscribe to listen to more of our inspiring journeys. Take these nuggets of wisdom and apply them to your own, and lead by example always. And I look forward to being on this journey with all of you. So thanks so much for joining today. Thank you, Jenn, for being a part of this journey with us. And I look forward to this epic journey ahead.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you.